Hi, and welcome to Passion, Purpose and Grit in association with Goldster and the Sporting Memories Network. My guest today is quite simply a British sporting icon. Those of us who of a certain age will remember those heady, magical days in 1992 when Sally Gunnell surged to Olympic glory in the 400 metres hurdles. The first female athlete to hold world record and world and Olympic titles, unbeatable for 2 years. She was our absolute hero. Hers is a story of dedication, sacrifice and hard work from an early age, first in long jump, high hurdles and heptathlon, and then on to perhaps the toughest discipline of all, the 400 metres hurdles. That wonderful day in Barcelona. And since retirement, author of books on fitness, health, self-fulfillment and well-being. She became a television presenter as well, now a highly sought-after motivational speaker, and among other things, the proud model for a statue in the National Portrait Gallery. And there is the statue. And hopefully, here live is Sally Gunnell. Hi, Sally. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
What are your thoughts looking back on those photos?
Oh, I know there was a few I haven't seen. Probably some I've never seen before, and some I haven't seen for a while. So
it's
always good to have a little remind you what you used to be.
Well, absolutely. And the statue. What's the story behind that statue? Because that's only a number of Olympians, is that right?
It is, and it's interesting because it was actually commissioned by my brother's wife's sister, who actually did it many moons ago, and did the statue, and then took it to the National Portrait Gallery, and they wanted to keep it. So it's funny because I'm going up in a couple of weeks' time, so they still keep us in touch, and we're still go in and they sort of rotate it around. So amazing.
Preserved for posterity, and all those visitors who come to London will be going, that's Sally Gunnell. That's fantastic. Well, Sally, I introduced you as a sporting legend, and certainly my memories of 92. I had an 11-year-old son at the moment at that time, and he came rushing into the bedroom and said, "Golden Girl Gunnell's done it again."
Oh, yeah, I don't think you realise the impact that you have. Obviously, you don't. You have got no idea. But I think it was when people just said to me, "Oh, you put me to bed with a smile on your face that night." And that's when you sort of start to sink in about, what you've actually done. And I think that's one of the best things now is people's stories of where they are, where they were on that night. And, most of them are shouting at the tellies with their parents that they remember, and and I think it was a lovely family moment that brought people together. Lots of people were in bars on holiday and things like that. So I think one of the stories that I remember is someone was in a traffic jam, and obviously everybody was listening on the radio, and when I won, all the hooters went off and the horns and the cars. So
absolutely brilliant. So how did it all start? How did you get into athletics?
I guess it was, primary school had a teacher that used to do lots of different activities, sort of athletics and gymnastics and all sorts of different things. And she was the one that sort of really encouraged us, really gave us the confidence at that young age, and actually just said you should go and join a club because that's, you've got that sort of talent. And I nearly joined the gymnastics club, and it was only because a friend was going down to Essex Ladies and to the athletics club that I thought, oh, I'll go with a friend. It will be a lot easier. And now there would be no way that I'll be doing triple back somersaults and still in the world of gymnastics or even develop that side of things. And it's just interesting, isn't it, how that big decision at 12 years old was so significant, and just loved it. I just loved the club, and started 3 days a week, and just the enjoyment of it.
Sport in the family, was there a background or tradition or anything like that?
Not really. No, I had a brother that played football, but we were, we grew up on the farm in Essex, and farming life is very, very busy. So, you never really had a few, one maybe a week's holiday at some point in the year, but everything else was all about farm life, and that's what it was all about. So my mum and dad were sporty at school, and they were always winning the trophies on sports day and things like that. So they obviously had that natural ability was in there, but it wasn't something that they developed.
And did they let you off some of your farm duties so you could go training?
They did, actually. They were, and I think some of that early development was because I was so active outside. I'd be running up the field to see dad on the combine, and we'd be playing outside all the time with the other kids on the farm. So I think that real active sort of lifestyle was part of it as well. And then, once I started that sort of commitment to athletics from 14, when I was spotted by my coach who had trained Daley Thompson, and he wanted us to go to Crystal Palace. My dad found time to drive us up there 3 times a week, and take us to the athletics meetings all over the country. And it sort of life changed really on the farm in that respect.
Did you know from the beginning that you were going to be good, or did you?
No, not at all. I just loved it. I loved, some of our weekends was sitting on a coach going to Manchester or Scotland to compete for the clubs. And I just loved the enjoyment, the camaraderie, the chats, and, and I like that feeling of running. Yes, I'd get nervous, but I like that feeling of running, and, and I would do quite well at that sort of age. And I guess it was probably once, Bruce sort of spotted me at 14 that it did get a bit more serious, but I still enjoyed, training alongside, senior internationals, and just the whole process of it. And I didn't think twice about, the commitment or the dedication or, all of those sorts of things. It was just a natural thing. And I sort of think back to that time, and I think I didn't know any other way of life. This was my life from, seriously from 14, and it was just the norm. And it's not until you retire that you go, oh, right, okay, so I've missed lots of family dues or, going out or whatever else, but it would just seem the norm almost back then.
So you didn't find it difficult at all to slot into a disciplined way of life, because training is discipline, isn't it? And you have to appear at certain times, whereas for teenagers life is sometimes a bit more relaxed, and you don't have to, you don't want to commit to time constraints or anything, do you?
No, I was on it. I knew I always turned up for training. I never even questioned it. And I knew I had to train because I knew I wanted to get better. I think the challenge was always to see how good I could get, really. And I think, Bruce was as he coached me from 14, he was he was a strong personality, and I wanted to train well to please him almost. Do you know what I mean? And to get better and perform so that he would realize how much time and dedication I'd put into it. So it's something I never challenged or never argued. I sometimes think so many people came in and out of the training groups over the years because it was quite tough at times. But no, I never questioned it. I'd have a bit of a moan if it was pouring with rain or a bit tired, but I always did it, always finished those sessions the best that I could.
And while your friends, your school friends, I mean, I can imagine this, and it certainly happened to me to a certain extent, your friends are out clubbing, enjoying, having a party, drinking, whatever. Did you ever feel left out or isolated or different, or how did you cope with that?
Yes and no. I had some really good friends in the athletics club that I sort of started with. And so that social life a bit. I remember probably maybe about 16 that I used to go out to a club, but it was on a Monday night. It was the Ilford Pele, and we used to go on a Monday night because I had no training the next day. So I sort of managed to sort of still have a little bit of a social life, but I made sure I always trained first, and then I'd sort of go down. And I think also I met my husband to be when I was 18 on a training trip, so in Australia. So I was starting to get, good trips away, and and that encouraged you to want to stay into it. And I think once I met him at 18 as well, there's a real stability came, because he was an athlete, so he understood why I couldn't go to events or why I had to be training. And I think that really, really helped at that sort of early age.
And school exams and O levels and A levels and that sort of thing, were they irritants along the way?
They were a little bit. I had very understanding teachers, as you can imagine, because I used to come home from training at 10 o'clock at night from Crystal Palace and try and do my homework in the morning, because I was so tired, and then and miss lots of sort of like Fridays or Mondays because I was away at championships or getting junior internationals at those sorts of stage. But no, they always allowed me to do it. I think I had very understanding teachers, very understanding parents, and just did it, as much as the best of my ability, really. But I struggled academically, didn't come naturally, and I suppose my sport and my athletics was my saviour, really.
And what made you choose the disciplines you did choose? I mean, athletics first, but you started off in heptathlon and high hurdles, didn't you? And long jump.
Yes, so long jump was first. I used to be called grasshopper, long legs, short body and all that. And then when Bruce spotted me at 14, he was obviously multi-events. And I think that was really crucial period, because I think what it gave me was, body awareness, and it strengthened up, rather than just disciplining in one sort of movement. I was throwing a javelin one day and a shot, then doing high jump and then long jump and then running as well. So I think that early development was really key. And I did the heptathlon up to about 18. So I did that for about 4 years, and then specialised in the 100 hurdles, because I think with the heptathlon, well, the 100 hurdles was just starting to get better. I was starting to sort of get into the top 3 in the country, and the sort of heptathlon, I was sort of struggling to get the points that I really needed to get out, into the senior teams, and that's what I was looking for at that point. Whereas the 100-meter hurdles was sort of happening, and then I remember first major championships was the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh in 1986, and and that was sort of quite a significant thing, because it was the first one, and I ended up winning, and I think that just spurred me on. It sort of gave me the realization that I could be good, and I like a major medal around your neck as such at that sort of age. What was I was probably I was about 20 at that point, so it just was really significant. But it also made me sort of question, because I just remember Bruce around that sort of time saying, well, why don't you have a look at 400-meter hurdles, because of your heptathlon background, because you had the strength over the 800 meters. I still had the speed from the 100 hurdles, and technically I was quite good because of all the events I'd had to learn over the years and things like that. And I picked things up really quickly. So we sort of, for 2 years, between the Commonwealths and the next Olympics, which was 88 in Seoul, we sort of did both events. And then I remember qualifying for the Seoul Olympics in both events. And it was really interesting, because the build up of it, my actual 100 hurdles improved as well as the 400 hurdles. And I broke the British record in the 100-meter hurdles. I broke the British record in the 400 hurdles. But it wasn't until I got to on that world scene of an Olympic Games that I realized that the 100-meter hurdles, I didn't have the basic speed, and I would never, ever be fast enough. And also it was dominated by the Eastern Bloc then, and drugs was very much involved in the sport of 100-meter hurdles, and and it was hard to race against those girls. Technically I was good, but I never had that basic speed that I needed for the 100 hurdles, and ended up getting knocked out first round in the 100 hurdles, and the 400 hurdles I ended up 5th in that Olympics. So we knew it was a right decision. And we knew that we'd finally found the right event, really. And that was, you know, that was then the next build up. And that was the belief I needed that I could, you know, reach the top at some point.
And participation in an Olympic Games, it's very different, isn't it, from normal life? You're training, you're aiming at one specific thing, but this is a thing you're aiming at over 4 years, and then you're sort of put in this goldfish bowl, aren't you? The whole team is together. It must be a lot of passion in that.
Well, I'd sort of done, you know, junior championships and that Commonwealth Games, but there is nothing like when you turn up for an Olympic Games. It is just enormous, and it is really, really scary. And I think that's probably what 88 was about, really. It was you know, I was excited, excited to be there, but it just felt enormous. And just finding your way around the Olympic Village, you know, I just remember seeing you know, the American basket, the dream team in the dining hall, and, you know, professionals, you know, the tennis players, and, you know, and just being blown away. This just wasn't just your little athletics world. This was like everything. And you know, you seem so small in what you had to do, but at the same time, just the magnitude of, you know, getting to your first rounds and the nerves and, I don't know, just the whole check-in and the warm-up area, and it was all really challenging, you know. And you know, how much you have to warm up earlier and actually walk to checking in, and, you know, and the call room, and it was all new and all really, really sort of scary. But, you know, it was just so important, was just to have experienced what that was all about, and to have got 5th in that final, and dealt with it almost, was the confidence that I needed to be able to say, right, okay, the next Olympics is in 4 years' time, and to have the belief that I could actually go and, you know, and stand on the top of that rostrum.
And how much are athletes in that sort of environment, that cocoon of a village? How much are they aware of the television, the enormity of the event, the amount of interest there is, you know, from those of us back home? Presumably you have to sort of cordon yourself off a bit, or do you embrace the whole thing?
I think it's very different to what I'd watched at home on the telly beforehand. I guess a little bit with what happened in London here in 2012. I think people started to actually get, you know, and if you were lucky enough to get there, or just, you know, we saw so much more of it, how big the whole thing is. You can't get carried away. You know, you could go and just have a party if you wanted to, which lots of people did. You know, there's free McDonald's, there's a whole social life. People used to go out, and you could see people say, hey, I'm at the Olympics, I'm at the party. But so the piece you've got to do is to, you know, realize that it's not just about that. It's about, you've got to do business and what you can learn, and, you know, and just, you know, pull yourself back in, really, and keep yourself as normal and in your safe space as you can.
Did you find that easy, or did you have specific techniques to help you focus in and cut out the extra bits?
I think, you know, just the experience of having my coach there, having other athletes that were in my training group were there. So I think that helped, you know, and not being, you know, I wasn't a party animal, you know. I wanted to take it all. I wanted to enjoy it as an Olympics, but I didn't feel the need to, you know, I wasn't just making up the numbers. That's how I looked at it. This wasn't just about getting to the Olympics. This was always, you know, about how good I could get and what could I achieve, and even at that sort of younger age as well.
Would you describe yourself as a competitive animal?
I think definitely got a competitive side, but I've also got a side of me that lacks confidence. So yeah, I could easily talk myself out of a situation, or think that I'm not good enough. And I think that was probably my biggest weakness throughout, you know, and I think that's how the general public sort of saw me. I think a lot of the press sort of maybe as well thought, you know, can she really get a medal? You know, when it came to Barcelona, is she really tough enough? Because sometimes the people that achieve at the top have got that sort of arrogance and can really hold themselves and portray themselves. Whereas I was much more of a, quite a quiet person in the background, and I probably looked like I didn't have that real fire that you needed. But I had the fire, but it was just trying to, have that self-belief and use the mind to achieve what you needed to achieve.
But when you're lining up on the blocks, there's 8 of you across a line or whatever, it must become a very individual thing. You've got to do better than the other people next to you. Is that how you see it, or is it just I'm going to do the best I can?
Yeah, I think in those early days, I think one of the things I had to learn is that you can't be affected by the people around you. So you can't, and that's probably what I did, sometimes go, she's got new spikes on, or she's gone off quite fast in a race. Have I gone off fast enough? But you've got to run your own race. And to get yourself in that sort of place, you've got to do a lot of mental preparation and visualization, and you've got to be able to, zoom yourself into what you have to achieve. And, and they're the skills you learn, and they don't happen overnight. They take a lot to be able to get there and work with amazing people, psychologists, and have a great team of people around you. And, it's a profession, and you need the best people around you to get you there.
And the best equipment and the best training facilities. I wonder if at times during your career you looked around other people and said, God, they've got better equipment, better gear, better training facilities. There's more money spent on them than there is on British athletes. Did that ever feature with you?
There was all that. And also, back there, women's sport was nothing like it is now. I was probably, the Linford Christies and the Colin Jackson were, sometimes getting, or, John Regis and whoever, were getting silvers and bronze, and would be earning so much more money than I would be if I got silver and a bronze in those early days. But it, it spurred me on, thinking, right, you're going to have to win those golds. And so I think there was, a lot. And I just remember before Barcelona, Linford and Colin went off to Monte Carlo to train. I went off to Portsmouth to train. So, but you can't let that get to you. That part of it is, it doesn't matter. I can still prepare here, and it's what I need, and I've got all my home comforts and all of those sorts of things. And in some ways, it makes you more determined, really.
Yeah, it must act as a little bit of a spur, though. I'm going to show them, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and when I, built that team around me, it was me and Bruce that did that. It wasn't somebody else putting that in place. So you step up and you want to make it work. That's the difference. And I think sometimes, lottery money, which came in after towards the end of my career, was, made a significant difference to people's lives and sport, and allow people not to have to work, part-time or whatever else, but their team are all created for them half the time, and sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can, it doesn't make you that hunger. So it's getting that balance right, really. And I think there was something about, as much as I would love to have had the lottery, it did make me hungry, because I was the one that stepped up and formed that, and invested in it almost.
And as you said, you got married early. You had support from somebody who knew a bit about athletics as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't get married till 26, till afterwards. I met John in those early days. But, he used to train with me. He was he got an international and then got spiked in his Achilles tendon. So when he got, injured and realised he couldn't live his life as he wanted to in the world of athletics, he sort of trained with me and worked with Bruce, and and became the backbone, really, and came with me on my travels once I'd won in Barcelona and all of those sorts of things. So that did really sort of help, and dragged me over the line and out of bed when I was moaning and all those sorts of things.
Well, let's talk about that 2 years unbeaten, unbeatable. Did something click, something change, or was this the result of a progression towards that?
I think it's always a progression, you win, when I won in Barcelona at 26 years old, you do sort of think, what next? Only one way down, but it wasn't, you have to reset your goals. It was about, all of a sudden, you know, one of the hardest things was that sustaining that excellence. It was about staying at the top, and you know, and dealing with that pressure, time in, time out, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it is difficult, but I think that was one of the challenges, was to sort of, you know, see what I could do, if I could hold all 4 major titles and world records, and you know, and that comes from confidence, and it is all a bit of a stepping stone and a journey, like everything really, that you have to go on.
And this expectation that you're going to win, did that change the way? It certainly changed the way we fans watch you. Oh, she's going to win again, that sort of thing. Did that change the way other people looked at you, the press, the media?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's just added pressure, really, and because you didn't want to let people down. You know that you winning, you know, in a world championships or whatever, is a great feeling for the nation, and you know, sometimes you have to put it in the right place. That you know, you can't take that responsibility on for everybody. It is about you. So you know, and that's a whole mind process that you have to do, and. So yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, it was difficult, and I think, you know, I look back at the day that I sort of retired, and I think that was one of the reasons why I did retire, because I'd had enough of the pressure and expectation, and it's funny, I couldn't do anything competitive for quite a number of years. You know, not even play cards. You know what I mean? It was like I couldn't put myself under that sort of pressure, and I really just needed to get away. And I think it was a good, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, and we had a bouncy castle, a salt course in the garden, and all of a sudden it all came back when I was lined up against one of the guys, our friends, who's the guy, and it was like, right, oh, there it is, we found it again.
And how difficult was it to hang the spikes up?
I think you have to have things in place. I think it was, you know, the last couple of years I got lots of injuries. And I struggled to get my head back round when I was injured, and you know, fighting back for another championships, and then I didn't want to leave on a low point. All of these sorts of things kept coming into play, and then I started thinking, right, I've got to get things in place about what I was going to do, what work-wise, all of those sorts of things. And I think once you start thinking like that, it's very hard to stay within the sport. And also I felt like I was struggling to, you know, to say, right, I want another Olympic gold medal. I felt very fortunate and very lucky to have achieved all of those 4 majors in succession. And I felt I wanted to do other things in life, and I just was excited about, you know, new ideas that were coming and new opportunities. And I just knew that it was time. And I also think I fell pregnant almost straight away with my first son, Finley. And I think that helped. I think that really helped, because there was something there really to focus, and you know, you couldn't go out training like normal and all of those sorts of things. I think that was quite key and significant in that sort of change, really.
And what happens after? That's always, all sports people have to worry about that or think about them. Had you had any concrete plans, or even vague plans about, when this is over, I'm going to do that? I mean, you said there are lots of things you wanted to do. Were there any that were higher up than others?
No, I think the thing I did is, because I was always very, you know, goal and vision driven, it was, you know, rather than have this one of a major championship that I'd had for many, many years, it was about having lots of different goals, and realizing that I was never going to get those highs. And that doesn't matter, you know, don't go looking for, you know, you're very fortunate to have experienced what you have. So don't go looking for that. So yeah, you know, I think, you know, working for the BBC, working within sport still was, you know, a great opportunity, because I was still involved in the sport, and I still got to go to the championships, and did that for 10 years, which was incredible. There was lots of sort of work offers. We built a gym. At the time I started, you know, and learning new things. So, you know, if you think about it, when I was running, you know, you couldn't go skiing, you couldn't go go-karting. So I actually wanted to learn some new, do other sports and learn new skills. So I was excited by all of those sorts of things, really. And just some of the opportunities that you got, charity things, to go to Angola for the British Red Cross, and just some amazing opportunities. And just thought, right, this is keeping me happy, and realize what you can go out there and achieve after you're retired.
And presenting programs like the one with Jerry Guscott and Matt Smith and
Yeah.
those sort of things. How did you embrace that? I mean, it is a different job being the one that side of the camera as opposed to the other, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you don't get training, and I think the thing I learned is just be yourself, and if it's okay and people like you, then fine. I don't think you can try and be somebody else. I think that's sort of the message I learned all the way across, especially with all the the speaking I do now. It's just be honest and be true to yourself, and and just enjoy what you do, really. And I loved it. When we did Body Heat, and we did sort of 3 or 4 seasons of that, it was just incredible. And and it was just fun. And and working as a pundit was just brilliant, because you got to interview Kelly Holmes when she'd won both of her gold medals and things like that. And I did, and I really enjoyed that sort of 10 years. But at the end of the day, it takes you away from your family a lot, and I left John at home with 3 very young boys. So and some of the trips were like 3 weeks away, which is really, really hard for him, hard for me at the same time. And I think at the end of it, you realize you're missing out, and and there's other things that I can do here. And John wanted to get into coaching at the same time, so I was sort of roles reversed almost. So he took up coaching, which took him all over the world, and I then came back and spent much more time with the boys, and working on other aspects in my life back here. So yeah,
it is difficult balancing all of these things, and when you've got a single goal, going to be the best in the world, going to win a gold, whatever, lots of things get pushed to one side. Did you feel that? Did you feel you had to sort of rebalance things and get things back in perspective, or did it come naturally, or did you have to work at it? How did that?
No, I think I've just, I've sort of had to reinvent yourself, I always say, throughout my whole life, really. So, there's just different stages. It's like when your kids are young, you do so much around getting kids active, and being a great role model, about parenting and all of those sorts of things. Whereas now they're in there, well, the youngest is 18 and the eldest is going to be 25. We've now gone into, we've reinvented ourselves again, really, all much more around health and well-being and resilience, and what we can add into our life as we age, and all of these sorts of things, really. So I've always looked at my whole life so far, and learnt so much, and had still have the ups and downs that I had in my athletics career, and you still have that now in life. And I'm sure everybody listening will say exactly the same. But I think the thing that my sport taught me is that that's how you learn, and you learn from those difficult situations. And the skill is to put it behind you and move on, and to find that positive. And that's what my life has really been like. And and sort of learn to reflect. I think sometimes when you are caught up in the athletics world, you're always on that conveyor belt, and you're always on to the next thing, and you're only only as good as your last race, I always used to remember people saying. And I don't think you ever really celebrated. And I think that's been the difference as I've sort of hit 50 and whatever else. It's just reflecting a little bit more, appreciating what you have and the good times, and and celebrating however big or small it may be, of those little achievements, and still get excited about what the future holds. So I think that's definitely
brilliant. And your boys, are they athletes? Would you want
2 of them have been through that. So they've always been very sporty, so we've had to encourage them in all different sports. I think that's one of the biggest things I say to parents when they come up is, you know, try lots of different sports. I think that's really good. And then if they are good, then get in a good club and specialize at some point. So they did, two of them were, one of them was in football, the eldest one, Finn, and then didn't get into Brighton Academy. So then took up athletics and got an England vest, which was amazing for 800 meters. And then went off to uni and is now wanting money. So he sort of got out of the sport and he's a personal trainer. And you know what? That's fine. And he's got a great business now in personal training. Luca then, my second one, went into athletics. He was the one that hated it, hated the pressure, hated who his mum was, hated sports day when they introduced who his mum was and all of those sorts of things. And then got into running and coached by my husband again. When, you know, they've had some great opportunities of training with the best in the country of over 815. So they could always compare themselves almost and realise that, you know, they loved it, but it's not, you know, they wanted a business and they wanted to be able to do that. So he's sort of set himself up in the social media world in the last year. And then the other one, the youngest, is 18 and he loves football. So that is his thing. And he's still playing for a team on a Saturday and just leaving college now. And who knows? But I've learned not to worry. You know, you get to that point now where you learn you can't, you know, you've done your bit to a certain degree and not to worry and let them, you know, they're still living at home. Will they ever go? I'm sure they will. Some point.
I'll bank them up. Still playing.
Plug myself into my charger because I can see that going down. So I do apologise to everybody. I'll change seats.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, offspring. What, you know, you can't have too many ambitions for them, can you? Your kids will do what they want to do in the end anyway.
Exactly. And I think, you know, they've got good morals and you know, and they're good to be around people and they respect and things like that. So, you know, there's only so much, isn't there? So, you know, they're on their journey and I'm sure there'll always be lots of times you can still help them and whatever else. But yeah, it's no, I've enjoyed it, you know, and it's lovely to see them blossom and move on, and all of our, you know, all of our friends, and see what they're all doing now, all the kids. So yeah, definitely.
And your authorial career, if that's the right word, your career as an author, writing books on well-being as well. You've written the autobiography, but also books on how to approach life, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done one for a little while now. Maybe that's the next stage. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is all about, and I think there's so many lessons that I learned from my running days about, yeah, the importance of exercise and sleep and nutrition, what we eat, you know, can affect, you know, our day-to-day life, isn't it? Our energy levels, you know, our health and our physical health and all of those sorts of things. And, you know, and I think when I was running, it was about, the thing I realized is that all those small little increments all add up to that bigger picture. And it's exactly the same now. And, you know, if we can just be the best version that we can be and we can help support, then, you know, we can deal with life so much easier. And, you know, and I think that's very much what I sort of pass on now, and just, yeah, and just help and, you know, a lot of the motivational speaking I do is much more around, you know, personal resilience and, yeah, the mental strength and that sort of side of things.
It must be difficult. I mean, you were so successful to talk about resilience in those sorts of ways. Do you find that there's a little bit of a pushback from people saying, well, you've got nothing to worry about, you were just successful, you did everything you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, resilience is very individual and it means different things to different people. I think, you know, I very much look at it as a holistic look. And I say, I am like everybody else now. You know, I am a mum of 3 boys, trying to balance work, trying to, you know, exercise is you know, and what I eat it's very much about trying to help myself as being the best version. You know, I know that I shout less at the kids if I've done some exercise, you know, all of those sorts of things, you know, and exercise now to me is, you know, sometimes just going for a walk and it's my me time. It's, you know, I plod very slowly still. I go to the gym because I know it's important to keep my muscles strong, you know, as we age, and to support my back problems that I've got from hurdling. So it's really important. So it's very, very different. And yeah, I get days where I don't feel like anything. And I get days where, you know, it's lovely now. I get my son that tells me what to do in the gym, so I don't have to think, because I've lost the motivation almost after all these years. So I do struggle, like everybody else, but I know that, you know, I'm much better to be around, and I'm much more productive, and, you know, and it's important to me, as I move on. Yeah, my mobility and things like that.
Well, I'm slightly further down the age range than you are, but the same principle applies. The older you get, the more you need to keep your brain active, but also your body active in whatever way it can. And the older people get, the more they say, "Oh, I've done my elbow in, or I can't walk anymore," and so on. And it's really quite difficult to push the message that almost any activity, any exercise is good for body as well as for mind.
Yeah, and I think you need to do things that you enjoy. You know, I'm always first to say, you know, if exercise is enjoyable, or you're doing it with people, or, you know, you've got a group, a community, or whatever, then you're much more likely to make it a way of life, and to stick with it. You know, and I will go. You know, I've just started going back out on my mountain bike with my friend, and, you know, we have a good old moan about our husbands or whatever else, and we have a cup of coffee and a cake. But it's really important, and I look forward to that. So that's, and I don't often think of it as, oh, I've got to go and do that, and it's enjoyable. So I always say to people, if it is just dancing, or you're doing some exercises in your chair, or, you know, or going for a walk. I mean, you know, walking is so underrated. I just think it's just brilliant for us. You know, it's just about getting that heart rate up, and going up a hill maybe every now and again, get yourself, but, you know, how you can get your leg strength and things like that, and how much you can actually do just from, you know, from the television in front of you, or a iPad or whatever, just in your lounge or whatever else. So I think it's about, yeah, finding what works to you. And if it's doing a Zumba class or a salsa class, and, you know, dancing, do it, you know, and it just has to be 10 minutes, you know, if you just can find 10 minutes and put the kettle on and do a few squats as you're coming up and down, or up and down out your chair, or whatever it may be, does make such a difference. So yeah.
And your advice now to people of our age, perhaps, putting myself in your bracket, but I'm a bit older than you, but people who are slightly more advanced in years, is to keep exercising. It's the same message to younger people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, and what I do, and, you know, and I suppose it goes back to the running days, it is about preventative, isn't it? It's about preventing things, you know, and not wait until it's too late, or it's happened. What can I put in place now? And that was what sport was about. You know, it was making sure that you had that massage, so you didn't get that injury, or you had your afternoon nap so that your body was recovering. So it was that, you know, prevention piece. And I think that's what, you know, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, I think it's good to have that mindset, rather than go, oh, well, it's all going to happen, and I'll wait until it happens, or whatever else. But what can I actually put in place, and what will help as I age, at whatever point, you know, because, you know, our muscles start dropping off from 30 years old, our muscle strength, which is so, you know, I don't think 30-year-olds realize that. No, and that's so young. So, you know, so important to do some sort of weight bearing exercise, you know, from 30 years old. And, you know, and bone health as well can start being affecting from, you know, 40. So making sure that we're looking at bone health, all of those sorts of things, and are really key, and, you know, whatever age, definitely.
I wonder what your thoughts are. I mean, there's this slogan, sport for all, and I know a lot of people who say, well, I don't do sport, don't like sport, don't do it. And you go, it's not really about sport, it's about exercise and activity that's more important. Well, that's my belief. I don't know what your feelings are.
Yeah, and it is so much more. It is about doing things together, isn't it? And that community piece. And yeah, I think so many people, you know, right, and I understand why people hate sport. in that they might have had a bad experience, whether that was back at school, being able to, having to go swimming or run around the cross country, and I can really understand that. But I think it's about, sport can be so many things, can't it? It doesn't, it's not just going for a run or going to a big noisy gym with lots of mirrors in or whatever else. So I think that's where sport is about, fun, enjoyment, but at the same time, physically looking at how that can affect your body, and prevented illness, preventing long-term issues and things like that. And that's how sports should be looked at.
And when somebody comes to you, a young girl, boy, even a wannabe athlete, comes to you and says, what do I do? How do I get to the top? How do I do it? What's your advice to them?
Well, I always say to them, go and find a club, because I think the club system, and doing it with other people is what it's all about. It is about rocking up, having, warming up with people, having a chat, having a laugh. It needs to be that. And there needs to be some enjoyment. If you're going to stick at it and you want to be and play, and be part of it for a long term, I think that's really key. I think also there is that side of it of, try lots of different things. I often say to them, don't just specialize from, we get parents getting in touch, and my husband is still coaches now at 6 years old. I think they've got, natural speed and whatever else. And, we say it's just too young, go and do lots of other things, go and do some, gymnastics or, netball, hockey, or whatever age. I think they just need to do that sort of, be young and try lots of different things. And I think, at some point, different sports vary. The world of athletics, you can go to it quite late, sort of 14, 15, and that's great. I guess if you're doing tennis or swimming, you've got to go a bit earlier, and, the dedication does sort of start early, but that's when it has to be fun. That's where you've got to make great friends. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. I always say to my boys, the skills that you learn from sport of, winning, losing, being part of a team player, picking yourself up, and that had, they sort of finished this in the world of sport of sort of maybe 20, but they still now are very disciplined about still, going out for a run or going to the gym still, because, very different meanings to what they had a couple of years ago, but that it's been installed with them. It's a way of life. And that's what you want sport to be able to teach you, and how important it is to still look after yourself.
But at the top level, has sport become something different? Has it become a business, a science, all of those things? I mean, I always say to people, you start playing sport because you enjoy it. You want to do it. You have fun with your mates and so on. But you look at the higher level of sport now, the football, the rugby, the cricket, the athletics even, there's so much science involved, so many developments in the shoes you wear and the food you take and all of those sort of things. Is that taking sport away from where it should be, in your opinion?
No, I think you have to put it in the right place again, because I think you still have to, you've got to find that enjoyment, because if that enjoyment goes, and I knew that when I was coming to retirement, that is when you need to get out. You do need to enjoy it. You can't just be, scared and hating it or whatever. You've got to be excited by the science. People say, would I like to be around now? And I would, because I'd like to see, what these latest shoes would be like to run in. To think about getting injured, but you'd be straight in for a scan. That excites me. Where that would go to, and just the sports science things, how they monitor things, and and change things so much quicker to my day. So that's all part of it, really. And I guess for everyone now, it's the norm. But I think the thing you've got to remember is never lose sight of, sometimes the basics, because actually you still got to work hard and still go back to some of those drills that you used to do that work. Sometimes you can get too sciencey, and get away from the real basic side of things. And I think that needs to be remembered. And that's sort of anybody that's at the top now. And Well, sometimes when you have injuries or you have a time away from that sport at that top end, you realize that those times make you realize how much you love your sport and you still want to be involved. And that's, I think, sometimes those, you know, what can sometimes be a dark time when you have got injuries or something's gone on, but it gives you time to think about, actually I still want to do this, and that
Yeah.
just helps you to get back into training hard and things like that. So yeah.
Where can you see sport and your sport in particular going in the future? Is it just going to go further down this hyper science, hyper money, professional line, or is there a...
Yeah, I mean, it will all change, goes up and down. I mean, you know, the sport as a whole, athletics, is struggling at the moment financially. You know, I think it's the same with, you know, getting money into the sport, advertising and that sort of thing is difficult because of, you know, what we're all going through as a country. And yeah, and that will start reflecting on how much money the athletes get and those sort of things. But also there's lots of different sports now. You know, there's so much opportunity for kids to be able to come into, and sport on television is, you know, it can go anywhere now. People have so much choice of what they want to watch, and, you know, and it's great, you know, especially in women's sport and the rugby and the cricket and football and things like that. So, you know, it's almost diluting our sport in some sort of ways, but at the same time we've still got some incredible athletes, you know, the people like Keely Hodgkinson, you know, who's got a silver medal in the Olympics, still only 21 years old. You know, we still have some amazing characters that are coming through. You know, and with Paris Olympics next year, it's a, you know, athletics still has that moment to shine at those sort of Olympic games. And you know, and that's what I love. That's what I love about the sport as well. You know, just seeing people going on that journey and seeing that pure natural ability and making it work on the day, on that one day.
Are you still in touch with athletics and athletes?
Yeah, very much so, especially through my husband, who's out. He's in San Moritz at the moment coaching the 800 middle distance group out there. So he's with British Athletics, so he's involved. So that's really good. So they still come here and they train down here in the Sussex Downs, and so it's really nice to be part of it for sure.
And are we going to be as successful, more successful in these athletes? You know, you've mentioned Keely Hodgkinson. What are the chances of Britain achieving in the next Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that John's decided, you know, how hard it is. Yeah. And, you know, only a very small majority of people actually achieve it on that one day. And, you know, there's so many things that can go against you, and, you know, and these are the reflections you have. And, you know, and I always say there is a little bit of luck on the day as well. But I'm sure, you know, the Olympics can conjure up all sorts of things, and maybe the people we don't expect to win, but there might be somebody else that does it on the day. And that's what I love about the Olympics. It's still only every 4 years. It's not like the World Champs, which is every 2 years now, and European. So it's still the ultimate for sure.
Are we over motivated by the need to have the things that you were so good at producing, the gold medals? Are we as a country, as a sporting organization, over focused on that? Because it seems to me the funds follow the medals. And yet we're trying to say to people, you know, we want everybody to take part in sport, in all sport.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think what has to happen is that we have to look at the grassroots and, you know, the system that backs the elite up, and how we get people through, you know, and I don't think it's as strong in every sport. You know, there needs to be a system that can spot the talent. You know, I was up at the Olympic Park the other day looking at the diving scheme, and you know, I love the feeder system that they have going on that feeds people to that elite system. And I guess, you know, diving's not as big as athletics. You know, athletics is a big sport. There's a lot of different activities within athletics, but we just need to make sure that that feeder system is in place, and that obviously you need money and lottery money and help and support from the government to be able to get that system in place and that runs smoothly, that we are spotting people and we're not losing people to other sports and have got a better system in place. That's what often happens as well.
Other sports have had to condense or produce compacted versions of themselves. An athletics event is naturally a long one because you've got so many events within it, haven't you? Has there been any thoughts in athletics about trying to adapt to the needs, apparent changing needs of television and commerce and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there will be still changes. We've got Jack Buckner, who has come in, who's running the sport now, and he's come from, the world of athletics was his thing as a medalist and many years ago, but he's been through swimming and he's bringing that in. So it's good to see that we've got some fresh ideas, but it is, with the IAAF and SEBCO, they need to work together and reinvent the world of athletics in some way and make it more entertaining and wanting people to come and look at it and see what happens, really. So, yeah.
And do you still keep in touch with your old opponents and foes and Essex teammates? And that? I've got this great thing. I played sport and I'm still in touch with a lot of my old playing mates. Is that something that happens in athletics?
It is. You still see each other. You go to all sorts of events, and we still bump into Linford and Colin and Denise and Jess and things like that. We don't so much socially. I think very much we've all got our own little groups of friends that we sort of mix with. But when you see each other, you just pick up on the laughter and the stories, and because you spent so much time with those people, and they know so much about you, and I think it's really important that does stay the same.
Yeah, and I mean the stories and the fables and the events and the experiences are all part of what makes. I'm getting on my soapbox a bit about sporting memories. Sporting memories is all about remembering things that happened to you as a supporter, as a player, as a participant in sport, and the memories that it brings you. It gives you so much joy as well as confidence and ability to talk as well. To me, it's a very important thing to be able to communicate that sense of joy that you had when you were playing or taking part.
Yeah, and sometimes it isn't always about what our sport, what we do, and being involved in it. It's the enjoyment that people get. I love, I don't know, a World Cup football. I love, Formula Ones on a Sunday, in our house. Sport just brings everybody together. And there's nothing else does that, does it? Hardly as much. So, maybe the coronation this weekend coming up, who knows? But I like that feeling and the highs and the lows that you go on with the people around you. And I think that's what sport does for us all.
So that's in the past. What's in the immediate future for you, Sally?
Well, we're still doing a lot of speaking at the moment. We're looking at doing some, often I go in and people say, I want more help and support. So we're looking at workshops and some life coaching stuff that we'll be going. So yeah, still involving, still enjoying what I do, and still developing as a person and learning new skills. And that's how I want it to be. And enjoying the gardening. So I've got into gardening, so I'm going to go out there, still some more weeding to do, still on top of that. So yeah, that still enjoy walking the dogs and bits and pieces like that.
A woman who enjoys life. It's been brilliant talking to you, Sally. Great messages for all of us, and it's been as I say, you made us proud to be British back in 1992, and it's made me very proud to talk to you today. And thank you so much for spending your time with Passion, Purpose and Grit and the Sporting Memories, and hope to catch up with you soon. Good luck in everything you do. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and all the best to everybody watching. Thank you. Bye.